How's it going, chasers? I hope you're having a kick-ass week. This podcast is brought to you by Gladfields. Thank you, Gladfields. I thoroughly appreciate the support. And if you're out there, especially in New Zealand, and you haven't tried this stuff, you need to get your hands on it and give it a nudge because it is excellent, excellent malted barley. The South Island peat is especially interesting for those of you that are into whiskey. Make sure you give it a go, guys. This podcast is also brought to you by Adventures in Home Brewing, a brick and mortar but also online store for the home brewer, home winemaker, cider maker, and yes, even distiller over in America. You can go to homebrewing.org/CTC to visit their specials page, browse wherever you like throughout the website from there. Anything you buy after that won't cost you anything extra than normal, but it will give me a little cutback over here, which is great. Thank you to Adventures in Home Brewing for helping us out with that, and thank you to everyone out there for supporting them. Today's guests are a couple of people that I've been really hoping to talk to for a long time. I'm excited about this one, guys. We actually started talking about the possibility of a podcast back before COVID, and things kind of went south for obvious reasons, but we finally got it in. These are the first professional, they like to call themselves yeast farmers, which I think is awesome, in New Zealand. So the first professional yeast propagators in New Zealand. Froth Technologies, that's what they do. They make liquid yeast for craft breweries mostly at the moment, and they're looking over time to expand into other niches like distilling, of course. I got to hang out with Simon and Ryan for a whole day to shoot a video that'll be coming out on the channel, on the Still It channel in a little bit, probably at the end of this week. And then I got to go back, have a few beers with them, sit down and just talk for an hour and a half for this podcast, which is absolutely exceptional. I love seeing capable local people that are, above anything else, passionate about what they do. That really gets me excited, and I am so freaking happy to see these guys succeed in the market here in New Zealand. Without further ado, Simon and Ryan from Froth Tech. Lads, thank you so much for doing this.
No worries.
We've got Simon and Ryan from Froth Tech, and you've just poured me a beer. What is this? The can looks amazing.
Yeah, we've got Duncan's from Kapiti, Parapara Umu. This is a strawberry and mango ripple. So they do a series of ripples. This is an imperial ice cream sour, 8.2%. So yeah, it's a desserty ice cream sour, strawberry and mango and vanilla, and then finished off with lactose to give a bit of sweetness, creaminess.
That legitimately tastes like confectionery.
Yeah. pretty different beers. Yeah, they do some pretty awesome stuff, just really pushing the boundary of like what beer can be, you know, which is awesome to see.
And they
they
just kind of had a crack at that, and I think the first one was like raspberry ripple, and they're quite popular. I know they're hugely popular in Aussie as well, big export market for them.
Oh, okay.
Like half their batch will go there, half locally, and yeah, just with the beautiful can art to go with it.
Yeah,
people can't get enough of them. It's a bit of a niche for them, and they do it well. So yes,
that's so good.
Yeah,
that slight lacto finish.
That little creamy sweetness.
Yeah, delicious. All right, guys, the huge question, the elephant in the room: what on earth is Froth Tech?
So,
dope name, by the way. Awesome name.
Thank you. Yeah, we're definitely frothers from way back. So, Froth Technologies is Aotearoa's first commercial yeast lab for servicing the brewing industry and beyond. So, we're growing pure liquid yeast cultures for brewers to get hold of locally for the first time.
That's very, very cool. It kind of begs the question, why has no one else done this?
It's a good question. We do get asked that one a lot as well.
Yeah, right.
Especially, I think there's a sense of pride amongst Kiwis and stuff that's made here. Especially when it comes to beer,
right?
And we didn't think it would be much of a topic people would care too much about, but they do. They're like, why has no yeast been made here yet? Why has it come from overseas? And there's a few reasons for that. The craft beer market, it's fairly new. 5-10 years ago, things looked pretty different. It was just emerging. and there was only a handful of breweries at that point. Now, fast forward to today, we've got about 230 craft brewing brands. So all of a sudden, there's a lot more breweries out there using yeast and more likely to explore different yeast strains and different styles outside the mainstream. So it's almost like more recently there's demand, and also the fact that, like, you know, you can figure out how to make beer at home or distill at home, and then it's a case of figuring out how to upscale that. So if you want to go commercial, rustle up some cash and get it going. A yeast brewery, on the other hand, while home brewers, home distillers will have used and played with yeast at home, there's not really a kind of instruction manual on how to grow yeast industrial scale. So, you know, it's not rocket science, but it is science. And so it's fairly technical. We've had to, do a lot of deep diving and figure out a lot of stuff along the way. And I think that's, certainly a barrier to just starting a brewery and making beer. But that was something we thought about doing early on, given our experience. But we just really did a lot of market research and wanted to do something that really serves the industry, something that's needed, and that's how we sort of pivoted and went down this crazy old yeast rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? There's so many breweries out there now, and there's breweries all over the world. There's breweries all through New Zealand. Don't get me wrong, it's a huge leap of faith to start a brewery.
For sure.
Like, a big-ass thing, but it's a fairly well-paved road, right? I mean, there's people that service the industry that you can get in touch with. You can get in touch with the people that will say the equipment and ask all sorts of questions of them. I mean, I'm sure even in New Zealand, there's literally consulting services, I have to imagine, that you just call up and say, yo, I want to start a brewery.
Yep.
There is.
I'll pay you money because I can't be asked working it out myself.
Yep.
Yeah, or I want my beer to be award-winning from the get-go.
Right. Yeah, right.
That does exist.
But who does that for yeast? Manufacturers, propagators? What's even the right word for it?
Yeah, I guess both. We propagate yeast, but manufacturing, I guess, is another term. We like to think of it as kind of farming. Urban farming. You know, where we just our paddocks are just tanks with trillions of microbes in them all working away. So we're the shepherds of the yeast in a way.
I love it.
Yeah, because it's grown. You know, it's an organic bioform that is growing, and we're tending to it, giving it what it needs, and it grows rather than taking inorganic things and manufacturing a product.
Yeah, putting them together.
It is that urban farming piece.
I love it. So, I mean, how did you, what brought you to this? Like, did you start going down that road of thinking about a brewery and then you decided to change? I mean, how the hell did you land here?
Yeah, so Simon and I, we've been mates since high school, and both sort of started homebrewing at uni and then kind of got more involved in the brewing industry. Simon had a contract brewing company where he was designing recipes, doing branding and sales and distribution and stuff, and then getting a physical brewery to brew that beer for him.
Yep.
At that time, I was working at a physical brewery brewing beer, and that was the brewery making Simon's beers.
Right.
So we were sort of working together, kind of with one step removed.
Yeah.
And so the natural progression there was, well, cool, let's go about it on our own. Started looking down that pathway of opening a brewery, and just recognised that the market, is very competitive. There's a lot of breweries out there now doing amazing stuff.
Like this.
Like what we're drinking, exactly. I guess the other part was we've always been really passionate about doing business that's good for people and the planet as well as profit. So we started looking down, the ways to do a sustainable brewery. One of the big pieces there is around local ingredients. And that was when we kind of had that eureka moment of cool, malt grown in Canterbury, malted there, and it's really well renowned. Our hops are sought around the world.
Literally.
Our water is, famous for being clean and pure. But yeast just wasn't a thing that was made here.
Which is hilarious when there's so few ingredients. in there. Right?
Yeah.
It's not like you look on the back and
one's
there's
on tap.
160, 160 ingredients. Whoa, that one's missing.
Yeah, it's like a quarter of the piece that was missing, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And it really is. I mean, I was talking to you guys once again off camera, and you're saying if you're buying liquid yeast from overseas, you're paying as much in shipping to get it here, get the stuff here alive.
Yeah, you can. It can be as much as that. Yeah, it's certainly a significant portion of bringing it over here because it has to come on refrigerated air freight because of its perishable nature.
Yeah.
And so the cost is a big factor there. The other, I guess, issue around that is if things get held up at customs and, for whatever reason it's not kept refrigerated, it can really impact the health of the yeast before it arrives to the brewery, and you might not be aware of that. If it gets too warm while sitting waiting to be processed in customs, the cells can start cannibalizing themselves, the viability can drop. And so, it's just having a local supply just kind of removes all those potential pain points.
Yeah, right. And I have to imagine that it creates the kinds of relationships that just thrive in I hate the craft beer world, the craft world. It's like such an overused term, I guess, but it's true, right? Like people in that world just enjoy the business of hanging out with other people and like it makes me so happy to see people like you doing this in New Zealand and then pull out a Garage Project can or something and it's your yeast. It's just more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're local means that is something possible, right? Like you can actually have a personal relationship with these breweries that are doing awesome things.
Yeah,
rather
totally.
than just being a bank account that you send money to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's been a huge benefit into our business starting out is. Yeah, I suppose there's a number of different angles we could have come in with this. We could have been like microbiologists and trying to, enter the craft beer industry and do yeast. We could have just been strictly entrepreneurs, seeing like an opportunity for some money to be made.
Yeah.
But we're number 3 there, where we've been in the industry anywhere from pulling pints, we're in the t-shirt and volunteering at the beer festivals, delivering kegs, brewing beer in and out of breweries. We've done a lot of service to an industry that we love, and so once we started talking to brewers and saying, "Hey, we're thinking about this yeast thing. Like, would you be into buying some yeast made in New Zealand if we were to do that?" And the answers kept being like, "Oh, hell yeah, definitely."
Yeah, right.
That was just starting to plant a seed, conversations. That now we can sort of, rely on those relationships. We've got trust there, we're mates. And so now it's just a case of us delivering on what we said we were going to do and helping them out with what they said they needed help with. So, it's the relationship piece is big.
Yeah. A real big part of that, something that so for those of you at home, we're recording the podcast now. The podcast is going to come out first for what you guys at home will see. But I've had the pleasure of hanging out with these guys for pretty much a whole day prior to this shooting the video that's going to come out soon, so make sure you catch that. And now I forget where I was going with that. But actually one of the relationship parts is that generally when commercial distilleries, breweries, whatever, are using yeast, they kind of figure out the size of the batch they're making, the gravity they're making. They use an online calculator or just whatever it is that they've got internally to figure out how many cells they need. They take a stab in the dark at the cell density or the viable cell density of the yeast they've got, and that's about right. And they pitch it. And I know that, I make it sound like they don't really care. They really do care, but the big issue is they don't actually know how many cells are in a litre of liquid yeast or per gram of dry yeast, right?
Yeah.
The way you guys go about it and the way breweries buy off you is a little bit different. So do you want to explain that? Because I think that's a huge part. Like it blows my mind actually at how cool that is for the brewery in terms of having someone local to buy yeast off. So you want to run us through how you roll there?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the big piece there is that yeast, is one of the really key features of not only making alcohol and carbon dioxide in beer, which a lot of us know, but flavour compounds as well. More than half of the flavour compounds in beer are directly attributable to fermentation, and more than half of the off flavours as well.
Right.
So it's a real key factor in the difference between great beer, good beer, and shit beer. So, like you said, a lot of breweries understand that, but they don't necessarily have the tools or the maybe knowledge, I guess, on how to perform cell counts. It takes a bit more resource, takes a bit more equipment. So a lot of them use educated guesswork, which they've developed time and time after trial and error. With us, we ask the brewers for the size of their brew, the amount of sugars in it, so the starting gravity, and we will recommend them a pitch based on our recommended pitch rates, so that it's the perfect amount of yeast to have a strong and healthy fermentation. And they know that they're getting that exact amount of yeast that they can put straight into the tank, and that means that their first brew they do with that yeast is going to be great, and the subsequent generations of reharvesting and repitching are also going to be strong.
So it just takes that whole guesswork, the pain of having to go through the calculation themselves of I just pulled it, whatever, a cone from X amount. Every time they order again, they can hit the reset button and know what they're going to get and what's going to happen.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. And I'm not knocking breweries that don't do that, because a lot of work goes into trying to get that consistent, right?
Yeah,
Totally.
But unless you've got the means to do a full yeast count, you're rolling the dice at some.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right, lads. This is a New Zealand whiskey made up in Auckland.
Awesome.
Distillery called 1919, and it is
yes.
Kitty Roar.
Okay.
Saw this on your Instagram.
Oh, did you? Yeah, cool. And I don't know how much spirits you guys drink, but I wanted to pour this for you because you should totally reach out to Soren and see if you can, get some collaboration going on between you. But it's also pretty approachable. It's more bourbon-like.
Okay.
Than anything, and it's some of the other stuff that's there if you guys want to try later on. So quite high proof. So figured I'd see how far we get. Yeah.
All that dried fruit in there.
Yeah. Big corn, lots of cherry orchard sort of stuff. While you guys are getting to know that, I see something in the corner over there that I kind of want to steal.
Because it looks good, or because you know what it can do?
Because the geek boner is raging. So I'll let you. Do you mind if I go grab that? Can we talk about that?
Please. Yeah.
Okay,
Bring it over.
All right. So for those of you that are at home and not watching this on on YouTube, I just put a strange-looking black box on the table with shit coming out from every direction. Oh, you're right, mate. You can't do that. What on earth is this, and why is it so exciting? Because I promise you it is.
So this is the first device in the country from a company called Precision Fermentation, who we stumbled upon in our endless search for just cutting edge tech. It's the technologies and Froth technologies. And so this device is called the Brew Monitor. It's about the size of a shoebox. It's a black box, and we've got a tube coming out the top, 2 tubes. And so this is a sensor unit for tracking fermentation live throughout the fermentation process. So typically in a brewery or at home, you're going to monitor how your fermentation is going by pulling a sample, checking the gravity, and in breweries you'll check a bit more than that, check the pH. But this box is monitoring 7 data points constantly. So in a brewery you might pull a sample and check it every 12 or 24 hours and put that data point on your chart and draw a line between the previous one, straight line. And so in this case, this is connected to Wi-Fi. There's a wee pump in there, which these 2 tubes on the top of the box connect in through the wall of your tank, and that pump runs intermittently, pulling the fermenting beer into the box, and through a little manifold which has those sensors plugged into it. So as it passes by, we're getting pH, gravity, dissolved oxygen, temperature inside the tank, temperature outside the tank, conductivity,
Pressure.
and pressure.
Conductivity.
Yeah, so that's a new one.
That's a little bit of an odd one to me. What's the deal with that?
I mean, it's a new one for us too. We
Don't feel like you have to drink that, guys. Feel free to dump bucket.
Oh, no, I'm into it.
To the next one.
Yeah.
Pretty more. Anyway, sorry. Carry on.
conductivity. So it's just another measure of the fermentation tracking. So all the data points that come from here are sent to a cloud platform.
Oh, okay.
So you log on, you actually like activate the box from the dashboard, and you can actually overlay those different graphs onto each other. So conductivity is, like for one, it's a good way to see if when you're adding yeast nutrient, you'll see like at the start of your fermentation, you'll see that raise the conductivity up to a certain point, and so it's a good way to check that your nutrient is at the same point it was your previous batch. It's where you want it to be, and then that should drop down and then sort of stabilize in the early stages of fermentation. So it's not like a really critical data point, but it's another one that you can overlay and like troubleshoot and
So we're literally talking like electric current conductivity.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the amount of, oh my word, back to chemistry, ions in the liquid, I've got to assume, right?
Something like that.
Chemistry, something. We don't know.
Yeah. But it's a pretty exciting piece of kit. So it takes samples for 6 of those 7 parameters every 10 minutes. And then for gravity every 30. So you're getting like a massive increase on the amount of data that you're gathering throughout the entire stage of the fermentation.
Yeah.
The other beautiful thing about it is that, once you've done a few batches and you can see through those data points what the general performance trends are, or what you're, like say you nailed a batch of beer and you want to sort of replicate that as much as possible. You can set that ideal data point and set alerts for if it falls outside of those, and it will like send a text message to your phone and go, hey, your brew's up like 0.5 of a degree above where you want it to.
Right.
Do you want to go in and check to make sure that your glycol system's working? Or
and it's going to work the other way too, right? You're going to have happy accidents every now and again where your glycol does shit itself.
Yep.
And holy crap, that tastes amazing. Or you way overdose your yeast nutrient, but now you've got data to say that, that's probably what it was.
Yeah.
And this is how it changed. Let's try it again. Or that was horrible, let's never do that again.
Yeah. I've had many situations like that in the brewery where we've gone, that batch was just amazing. Yeah. But we don't really know why. All the ingredient inputs were pretty much the same, but something in the process led to that being fantastic. So having that information in front of you gives you so much more power to really understand.
Yeah, and like you were saying too, right? That like it used to be a 24-hour straight line between the two.
Yep.
Where it may have peaked horribly in between or troughed.
Yeah.
And you don't know.
What's actually interesting looking at the definition of these charts is like, we're used to seeing dot along and lines in between, but you've actually got a much more organic thing going on. Like same with gravity, it'll sort of like hover up and down and sort of stuff like that. Yeah,
it's a lot more noisy.
It's a lot more noisy. There's a lot more texture to it. You can sort of see the organic journey, how long it's taking to get from your target to your final is really important. I suppose brewers normally look at it a bit like, here's where it starts, here's where it needs to finish.
Yes.
So more of like a line, down. But when you start to look at it in this more organic way and overlay it with your other data points, how long it takes to get to that finishing gravity is actually, and pH drop is a key part as well. If you're trying to replicate that beer that was a winner, it can be same ingredients, it can be same starting and finishing gravity, but things like how long it takes to get there allows development of flavor profile and the right amount of time to clean up and stuff. So we're going not just up and down, but sideways as well, and really looking at that.
So you're adding a whole other dimension to it, literally.
Yeah.
It's not just a straight line. How far down do we go?
Yeah.
It's how long do it take to get there, and how much turbulence there is, for something like heat, right?
And something that these guys are really big on making a point of is like, this isn't about like automating breweries. This is still, the brewer is still brewing the beer. They've just got a lot more eyes on what's going on. And if something not going quite right, it's not till the end where they realize, and it's like, oh, well, what can we do now? You can actually tweak it and adjust it and really nurse that beer through as a brewer, because you know a bit more about what's going on. And also that like brewers are constantly recording these data points as they're sampling, but that kind of goes in a folder typically, and it's not so easy to bring it up in the future and to compare it with future batches. This like dashboard lets you just overlay previous ones, set that benchmark, and so it empowers the data to be really, really useful.
So you can literally take like a model. This was our best batch of the last 15.
Yep.
We put that in, and then you can set tolerances above and below it.
Yeah, you can choose how wide that tolerance is.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the temperature profile of that beer.
Yep.
That specific brew.
Yep.
And we want to keep it within 1 degree of that the whole way through.
Yep.
Yep.
And the other
cool, man. That's super dope.
Yeah, you can also overlay each of those individual data point representations, so your graph for pH, your graph for gravity, and overlay those on top of each other to see how those interactions correlate to each other.
So your pH skyrockets. Pressure. How does that affect your gravity? Change your gravity. Right.
So that's, again, really just useful tools to be able to better understand what's happening inside the sealed walls of the tank.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it literally was magic, right? Like, historically.
Totally.
We can control the ingredients. We know what we're putting in there. We'll kind of fuck with that in ways that are going to alter the output of the beer. And then magic happens in beer.
Yep.
Leave
it out overnight. And
the German purity law that Einheitsgebot bought from 1516 initially didn't have yeast as an ingredient in there.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, there was we didn't know as much as what was going on in there, and so with the modern age in science and microbiology and the ability to see at a microscopic scale, we realized it wasn't just magic or magical slop at the bottom of the tank. There's these little guys in there that are doing the work, and so I don't know. I suppose this is just like another layer deeper, where it's like you're going into a deeper understanding of what's happening in the tank.
It's something that tracks me for both beer and distilling, and I think in some ways beer is further ahead of it than distilling. But I'm of the opinion anyway that there is a good scientific reason for every outcome that you ever get in beer or distilling. It's just that our understanding of what's going on is incomplete. We don't have enough information. We don't make, there's some weird chemical interaction between two different precursors, like whatever, and we just don't know what that is. And that's why this sort of stuff excites me so much, because it, like you said, right, it's another peek into something that is not, how do you put it? It's not something that is obviously intuitive for a human, right? Like we can't look at a tank and know what the gravity is. So like just from the get-go, we're not built, we don't have the understanding to know what's happening in there. It's science that lets us do that.
It's kind of like, I sort of think of it as it's sort of informing, like, as a brewer, you get to sort of form a bit of intuition and a bit of understanding about, how your fermentations go, and you sort of get tuned into that. But I guess this is informing that intuition and giving you actual data points so kind of sciencing up the art of brewing a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. So, I mean, I talked to you guys on Wednesday. It's now Friday. And on Wednesday, you guys were excited because your new toy was coming.
Yeah.
And now your new toy is here. So you haven't even got to plug this thing in yet. It's obviously never been used in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So if there's people excited in New Zealand to get their hands on one, worry your horses just a little bit.
Yeah.
But further down the track, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding of people, like, you want to test this, you want to make sure it does everything it does, that it says that it does on the box, basically. And then in the future, you're hoping to be able to kind of be an intermediary into the country. So if people are interested, they should get in touch with you guys.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, these guys have been working on this for 5 years. The founder is a data analyst, and you can really tell that when you're using this platform. It's just beautiful how polished it is. They're really similar kind of startup to us, and we sort of inspire each other.
Okay.
Similar values and attitudes. We're all passionate about the craft beer industry. They've also got brewers on their team. And so, they've trialed this in North America with a bunch of awesome breweries, and I think a yeast lab or two. They are, COVID is kind of shitting on the States a bit because the orange dude didn't do much about it. So
our flirt with politics for the podcast. And we're done.
And so I think their plans to expand global got hurried up a bit.
Right, yeah.
And they've sent this to a few places around the world. Peru, there is one in Australia. I think we just got in touch with them at the right time, where they were like, New Zealand, great, yep, you're next. Here it is. A week later, we've got it. We're going to be certainly, doing some rigorous testing in-house with what we're doing, because, precision fermentation is something
it's kind of your bread and butter, right?
Yep. And I mean, we're already just so wowed by it and its potential.
Just the concept of it.
Yeah, we know. We've mentioned it to a few breweries already, commercial breweries who are like, "Oh damn, yep, I think I need one of those in my life." So once we've figured out how it works quite intimately, we'll be doing some trials for like demoing it to some breweries. And expanding from there. I know they're certainly wanting to set up in New Zealand, and we'll be able to offer some support around that and understanding. And I think it will be a real game changer for the industry.
I hope so, man. Like on paper, it's just epic. It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
So I've just poured you another. You can pour your own. This is a whiskey from Texas. This is Balcones. And the reason I poured this for you is, remember we were talking the other day about yeast for distilling. These are one of the guys that co-pitch 04 and M1 together. Right. And also, too, I just love spreading the good word of Texas whiskey because they're doing pretty awesome stuff. Cool. I just realised I'm wearing my shirt. I see you looking at my chest, and I'm assuming you're not checking my rack out. Texas just does all sorts of crazy stuff too. Like this is, I don't actually know for this, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is like 2 years old. Yep. As opposed to, like 8, 10, whatever. The climate's just so crazy. These guys have the problem of having to pull, trying to figure out how to keep the whiskey in the barrel longer. Right. To get more age rather than just like teabagging oak flavour out of the wood. Yeah. So it is pretty crazy. But I don't know. I do. There's something in there that's familiar to me when it comes to 04, like that kind of fruity sort of thing. Anyway, I thought professionally you guys might be interested to try it. And like I said, I love spreading the good word. But it's interesting, eh? Yeah. Huge wood flavour on it. Yeah. Big time. But I know I'm going to get in so much trouble if I don't pick your guys' brains on yeast when it comes to distilling. And I know that we've got a bit of a mismatch here where I'm no yeast expert and I know you guys are not in the, you're much more in the beer world, if that makes sense. Yep. But I thought we could have a bit of a yarn about it and see where we can get to here. And the idea of having like a New Zealand, just like whiskey strain or something. Yeah. How cool would that be?
That'd be very cool.
Go after, I think in some ways it's kind of scary for beer brewers. Yep. Like the idea of a wash souring spontaneously
Yep.
is like these guys. Actually, I don't want to talk out of turn. I'm not sure if Balcones do it, but I know a lot of distillers will literally just let whatever funky crap is in the grain after the Saccharomyces has done its job. They'll leave it for another couple of days, let it take off, and wait for the pH to start to change. Lacto, I'm guessing it's mostly lacto from grain.
Some grain, yep.
Yeah. And I know that's kind of scary. In saying that though, we just had a sour beer, right? So
yeah. I mean, it's definitely those other microbes outside of Saccharomyces are certainly seeing a lot more attention in the brewing world these days as well.
That's true.
A lot of people playing with Brettanomyces, Lactobacillus, Pediococcus, all kinds of different anomalous, weird microbes that are doing crazy stuff. There's recently been discovered an acid-producing yeast. So traditionally for like souring beers and such, you're relying on lacto or pedio.
Bacteria.
Bacteria. But this is a acid-producing yeast. So there's just a massive range of these microbes out there that aren't Saccharomyces cerevisiae that can be used to achieve a whole raft of different results. And so it's certainly seeing a lot more incorporation into commercial brewing, I think, these days.
And actually some of the research has come out on that. I mean, there's a handful of different acid producing yeasts that are being found and certainly validated as well as being not just contaminated with bacteria. Like these are souring beers up to like 70, 80 IBUs, and normally like above 10 you won't see bacteria souring beer. Wickerhammermyces is one, and Schizosaccharomyces. These some of the research I've read about has said that like sort of checking the microbes that'll be in wild fermented or spontaneous fermented beers, that they're often found in there. So it's not even necessarily like they haven't been discovered before. It's just, I suppose they've been assumed that sourness is exclusively coming from bacteria. So it's just more of like the understanding that they exist and they're definitely not bacteria.
Right.
It's more understood now.
That's very interesting. Is this big news in the yeast world? Like,
it is.
Like, is that quite, like, are people excited about it? Like, how do we use this? What do we do with it?
Yeast nerds are definitely excited about it.
I mean, we'd love to see and be part of sort of promoting non-sac yeasts out there. We've got a wild project of our own where we're looking for them, mostly for sac, but no doubt there'll be some non-sac in there as well. Like on the one hand, some breweries might be fearful of using bacteria because of those souring. More so that like the bacteria, if you're not practicing really good hygiene, can jump into your clean beers, and so that's the fear around it. But there's certainly breweries out there who are using it and are just making sure they're damn clean and having no trouble there.
Because you see that even in the homebrew world, right? There's people that are like, that is my sour setup.
Yep.
Like everything. Like,
Same in breweries.
Hoses, brew buckets,
everything.
all of it.
Yeah, completely separate.
Same in commercial breweries.
Yeah. And then there's others that just like, fuck it. That's what PBW's for.
Yeah.
Yeah, a wee bit. But I mean, acid producing yeast doesn't sort of rule out that situation anyway. Like it's not
does
like,
it almost make it closer? Because it's like is it still more likely to be...
If the fear is sourness in beers that shouldn't be sour, an acid producing yeast and getting into the wrong tank, the wrong time, is going to have cause the same trouble. So the same hygiene practices need to be used. It's just, from what I've read so far, there's, I suppose, the souring potential of bacteria can be a little bit one-dimensional. Like it's sort of just, you get that acid coming through.
Right.
When with a yeast, it has a bit more of a profile to it.
Okay.
They can be a bit weaker and like low attenuating. So they're typically, in the experiments I've looked at, have co-pitched. So you can use like a standard sac to kind of knock out the sugars and build up the booze. But I've seen a number of different ratios as low as like 1 to 10. And still getting that souring coming through.
Wow.
So you can get that good attenuation and then some interesting profile from the non-sac acid producing strain. So
And-
real cool.
And is that literally producing lots of different types of acid, or is it more it's producing like
Lactic
the
acid.
actual sourness is coming from a certain acid that it's producing, but then it's throwing out other weird esters and stuff around that, rather than
It's
that's
more,
where the profile's coming from.
Yeah.
it's more the latter. Yeah.
And do you know what sort of time frames that works on? Like, how long do you have to leave it to start souring past the initial or the primary fermentation, I guess we can call it?
Also, it depends on the microbe you're using.
I meant with the yeast.
With the sour.
I'm not
acid-producing
sure on
yeast.
time frame on that. I can't recall off the top of my head, but yeah, it's certainly not slow motion. Like this isn't like part of an aging program.
Right.
This is like part of your typical
So
production
it's
time
fast
frames.
for production.
Yep.
Because that's what I'm driving at, right? Like once again, going back to these guys that I've talked to that they do no boil mashes, and then they let what's in the grain take over. But they're still talking about I don't know, maybe 7 to 8 days from pitching through to we're now distilling.
Yep.
And you wouldn't want to have to wait another 2 weeks to sour.
Yeah.
But the idea of using something different, even just from a story point of view, right? It's fun. When you're talking to whiskey nerds or whiskey geeks, to be able to say, this is sour, but that's fun. Or from one of the things that a lot of the geeks will throw around in the circles is, okay, that's cool, it's producing something nice, but you've got no control over it. So repeatability, all those sort of things. So the idea of being able to mash, boil, sanitize, and then pitch a specific culture that you know is going to give you. This is what you guys do, right? That's the reason we have pitchable yeast for beer. That's really interesting to me, right?
Yeah.
So if it can be on that same sort of production timeline, that could be something really cool to play with.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is it something that people can actually get their hands on right now, or is it literally just stuff coming out of labs at the moment? Or
It's out there. I'm not sure about any in the country. But yeah, no, it's emerging, and the States have always been a little bit ahead of us in the craft beer scene. So we certainly keep an eye on what's happening over there pretty closely. And yeah, I think even with our Wild project, we were sort of initially looking exclusively hopefully for a Saccharomyces cerevisiae, but hearing more about how these acid-producing non-sac strains are out there, it certainly
you know names?
opens our scope a little bit more. Say what?
with schizo, you mentioned that before.
Saccharomyces is one.
Okay.
Wickerhammermyces. Was it Lacanaceae thermotolerus?
We've got two. I call that a win.
Head to Milk the Funk Wiki, and you'll find that all of this research has been published in there as it's coming up. And
awesome.
There's even a great Milk the Funk podcast about it, which goes fully into that topic.
Awesome. For those of you on YouTube, I will find that and I will link it. I doubt it's on YouTube. I think they just do audio, don't they?
Yeah.
I'll whack a link down below because I want to listen to that as well. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we kind of skirted the topic here about yeast and distilling, and we never quite got to it. I've got something here that I've distilled using Hornindal, and distilling's weird because you never know what flavors are going to carry over. You don't the more you distill, the more you can take an educated guesstimation about what flavors you're going to be able to keep, what you're going to lose, what you're going to amplify. But you just never really know, if that makes sense. So I found this quite interesting because I haven't tried it for quite a while, like literally since I made it. And a lot of the fresh, almost like mandarin-y, more tropical flavors have died off. But that fruit leather thing is still lingering quite heavily.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
And my point being is that literally came from the yeast, right? And to be fair, Hornindal's kind of a fucking sledgehammer.
Yeah.
But isn't that what you need for
That's my point, right?
wash?
There's a huge opportunity for people to geek out about yeast selection for distilleries.
Yep.
And traditionally, even, like when people think about the best distillers in the world, like it's Scotch, right? Like that's kind of what people think about when they think of the top notch, the top shelf in our day and age. And you go into a tour there, I haven't done it yet, but I've talked to a lot of other professional distillers that have, or people that are in the industry, maltsters, for example, and they just don't give a shit about ingredients. It's like they care about it, but it's what gives us the most yield is the be all end all.
Right.
And if we can generate a little bit of flavour out of it that's different to something else at the same time, cool.
Okay.
And it's changing now, don't get me wrong, but remember this is an industry where if a change happens now in Scotland, you'll start to see that in 15 years. Really coming out, by the time it becomes mainstream and then it makes it onto shelves. Oh, sorry guys, these are all like 60-odd%.
Yeah.
I forgot to tell you.
Pretty punchy, that one.
Yeah. And this has not had any wood either, so it's not any of the wood.
That's super interesting.
It's so fruity.
Really
but I'm not crazy, Like there is a interesting preserved fruit
there is.
thing going
it's kind of like that dried like stone fruit
because what would one of your whiskies sorry, what went into the wash for this one?
Oh my word, you've put me on the spot now, my boom.
But grain.
I did this as part of a control, and I literally did an AB with, I can't remember the other yeast I did it next to, but I think from memory it was Gladfield Distillers Malt.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was it. It might have been, I may have been out of Distillers Malt at that point of time, and it was something like Gladfield's Ale Malt.
Yeah, base.
Nothing else, nothing crazy, real standard distillation.
Yeah. So I think I may have tried, what do you call whiskey that hasn't been on wood?
White whiskey, white dog, moonshine, white lightning, depends where you're from.
Yeah. Cool. So I haven't tried many white whiskies.
Okay.
So how would this compare to something, normally a whiskey before it's gone on wood?
Heaps more flavour.
Yeah.
Right. Compared to your standard
assumed as such,
yeast.
but yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it next to that Balcones, right? Like that Balcones is big and pretty bold as terms as flavour comes, right?
Yeah.
And I love that whiskey, but a lot of the flavour that's coming through. I mean, you guys know grain, right? You can pick the grainy flavours out, and they've. Oh, I didn't bring you guys the APA.
Oh,
sorry, man, I totally forgot.
That's
I guess I'll have to come back sometime.
Yeah.
The grain flavours are familiar enough for you to know where they are. You can pick them out and they right. So you quite often get those coming through in whiskies, but there's so many things that happen in a barrel that aren't just putting wood flavour into it. That just morph everything and change everything over time. Yeah. So it is a little bit hard to say what this would be like in a barrel. Couple of years' time. So there was Mandarin and pawpaw, fresh pawpaw when it first came off the still, and now it's sort of heading. Yeah, there's almost like a sweety fruit flavour in there, kind of halfway between almost overripe fruit and leaf litter, kind of.
Gotcha.
Like tropical forest, I guess.
Yeah, it's very much tropical. I get a lot of that.
But not fresh tropical fruit.
No.
So I wonder if that pawpaw has kind of changed into that. But anyway, my point being is that I wanted to fuck with it just to see if this idea of yeast selection can be just another lever in the arsenal of the distiller, right?
Yeah,
well,
and I mean
sorry, even with craft brewers, buying yeast from us isn't going to solve their problems, and it's not going to just give them what they're looking for. They have to use it really well, and so to get what they're looking for out of it. So I think, like you've done here, and with distilling, if you want to pull some unique flavors thanks to a unique yeast and get it in the glass, you're going to have to be smart about how you use it as well.
Yeah, it's not a magic bullet. There's so many other things that go into it. It's just I find beer and whiskey and a lot of products like this, like cheese and all sorts of stuff, there's no magic bullet for it, right? There's no one thing that makes a good beer. There's 100 things that if you fucked one of them up a little bit, you almost wouldn't even notice.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. It's the sum of many parts, right?
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing with that is like Kvike yeast is probably one of the few sort of types of standard brewer's yeast that would really be able to be used in distillation. Would that be true? Like if you put like a standard American ale yeast and the alcohol tolerance is only like 9%.
Oh yeah, so that's a pretty like standard misconception. Like most, like all through Scotland, they're fermenting to 8-10%.
Really? Okay.
Oh.
So my go-to when I don't want to think about yeast is 05.
Right.
Or something, you know, like something really like a clean American. If how do I put it? If I want to take yeast off the table,
Yep.
and I want to like
Explore something else.
yeah, like I wanted to test putting a little bit of chocolate malt into something and see
Yep.
what it did. I'd do one without chocolate malt, one with chocolate malt, and I'd probably use something like 05.
Right,
as
okay.
my main yeast. There's all of the like the daddy and the turbo and all that sort of crazy stuff that'll get you through to 20%.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably pushing it a little bit even for them. You guys probably know better than me. I've never used it.
Right.
But there is, I don't know, I think there's something to be said for a good fermentation with a nice yeast, even if, it's like, should we have another beer actually, guys? I see all these delicious beers sitting on the table. And
Yeah.
I feel like I've been throwing whiskey at you guys. And
Should we try the
shutting it down.
should we try the Day of the Dead?
Yep.
Whoa, yeah.
Chili chocolate.
Yeah. but you know what I mean? Like, even if you want a beer that doesn't showcase yeast, you want a good yeast to get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
You need exactly. A clean yeast that's pitched at the right amounts and has a strong like fermentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this could entirely be, I was a home brewer for years before I even considered distilling. Mm-hmm. So it could be my bias that's been brought through into it. But the more people I talk to that are new to distilling, they're sort of heading this way as well. And it does go, oh, thanks, man.
No worries.
Like I said, once again, that's heaps, dude. Yeah. I don't want to taste.
And so, like, I mean, yeast's role in brewing, I mean, it's a bit of a buzzword, but it comes up as balance.
Right.
And so that your yeast is trying to be in the glass in terms of its profile alongside your hops and your malt, sometimes at different levels, but a balanced profile. What kind of role does yeast play in making a whiskey? Like, I mean, the way I kind of see it is like passing through a still compared to just fermenting in a tank. You know, that's a more gentle process. You're trying to guide all those delicate things through. Passing through a still is like almost like passing through
the gates of hell.
And only the like gnarliest kind of flavor compounds come through, and you know, it's this, and then they're concentrated. So like, what do you like say for this with this Kvike strain? You know, like if it's clean and you're looking for yeast profile, you're not going to get it. But are you trying to like get the yeast to throw up quite aggressively, like a lot of gnarly compounds?
Yeah. So when I pitched it. First of all, I opened the pack up, and I won't mention the homebrew store I bought it from because I blame COVID. But I opened it up and went, oh shit! It just smelled like dead yeast.
Right.
Like horrible autolysis.
Yep.
And I thought, oh fuck it, and I just pitched it anyway. And I'd read heaps about, you know, under pitching Kvike, especially Warnendale, pitching it really freaking hot to crank the fruity esters out. And just like we were talking about before, right? I had no idea what was in there. I didn't know if it was completely viable, but that's what Kvike smelled like.
Yep.
I didn't know if it was 100% dead and there was like 2 living cells in the entire pitch. It's like, fuck it, I'll just double the pitch of what was recommended, which was still disturbingly low compared to any other yeast I've ever pitched, you know?
Right.
And it took off.
Kvike, man. It's,
Dude, yeah, at 40 degrees Celsius. Bonkers.
Ooh.
yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah.
And so, what was your ABV after that? Do you remember?
Man, I seldomly go over 10%.
Yeah.
Like, my zone is kind of like 9-10%. It's kind of where I'm comfortable. It's normally when I'll do stuff, unless I'm trying to push something.
Cool.
But yeah, in terms of the off flavors that get thrown through, this is a great illustration of just never knowing what's going to come through, right? Like, I thought from my beer days, you're boiling yeast, you're going to get autolysis.
Yeah.
But then I did a grappa collab with a winemaker a while ago, and I literally poured slurry into the tank that's like probably thicker than the stuff that you're sending out the door, and distilled that with grape skins and enough water just to keep it moving in the tin.
Right.
No crazy yeast flavors at all.
Wow.
It's all like tropical flavors and like grape skins and berries, and it tastes like Ribena. So it's just you just don't. I mean, obviously, if you've been distilling for 50 years, I think you're probably going to be better at it. But at the same time, if you've been distilling for 50 years, you're in the industry, and how often do you get to? If you're a whiskey distiller, you've probably never made grappa, right? So it's, I don't know, man. It's a tricky thing to pick, and I think in some ways, like if you go back and think about craft beer, right? Like how craft beer grew up, everyone was just trying to just make something better than the big beer companies that you can buy at the supermarket, right? That was goal number one.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy shit, we can do that. Well, what if we make something that's 8%?
Yeah.
What if we put more specialty malts in it? And then before you know it, you've got triple Russian Imperial Stout.
Yeah.
Or Imperial ice cream stout.
Exactly. And I think, and I kind of feel like craft beer went way off the Richter scale in terms of just doing weird ass shit, especially at home, right?
Totally.
Yeah. And now it's sort of come back to the word you used to use before, balance. And I feel like distilling is going to start doing that too. So back to what you're saying, I think, for me at least, I want to make yeast do something crazy to really test it. Because if you had that Hornindal but only at like 5% of what it did, it'd almost be like it's in your head. Like, can I taste it? Can I not taste it? I don't know. Did it do something?
A bit too subtle. You want to bring yeast more to the forefront and see what you can pull out of it.
And then it's easy to dial it back. And it's like totally legit. Like this is probably, I don't know, 60, 70, 200 different barrels that have all been mixed together. And I've been to that distillery and I've tasted the barrels that come out of it. The same spirit into 2 barrels right next to each other on the same day, same oak from the same freaking tree in the same part of the warehouse. And they taste like 2 completely different spirits.
Yeah.
So blending is just part of the industry.
Yeah.
So you can make a sledgehammer like the Hornindal and then blend it back.
Yeah.
With something else.
So when I was working at the Wild Workshop at Garage Project, we did a lot of blending with our spontaneously fermented beer, right? So we had a cool ship upstairs, which is basically a shallow bathtub. We'd pump 80-degree wort up into that. We'd leave it sit overnight with the windows open, and whatever yeast and microbes are in the atmosphere would inoculate that. Then it would go into barrels for like 1, 2 or 3 years. And when it came to blending time with those, it was really interesting because you'd have like the barrels which are tasting like, fantastic, and you go, cool, we want to blend those ones together to get the best out of it. You do that, and it's kind of like something's missing. And then you'll add like some of the barrel that's tasting not so great. And suddenly when that mixes with the great ones, it's like, shit, that's what was missing. It's like that depth and complexity, and so blending's just I love that.
So that's good advice, I suppose, if you're doing barrel stuff. Like we visited a brewery a while back and you were like, yes, like we tasted a few barrels that are partway through their aging and it was like, ooh, yeah, there was one in there that was a bit gnarly, but you're like, don't ditch that one. Like that could be your little nugget that kind of just makes it pop off,
This is
damn tasty.
Damn tasty, yes. And you said it was a chili stout, right?
Yeah, chili chocolate. Is it a dark lager, I think?
Lager, yes, you're right. Yeah. I thought it said stout. Yeah. So this is a perfect example of balance, right? Like if you just poured this for me, I'd go, this is a really nice beer. Huh, what is that? It's not...
kind of figure out the flavours from there,
Yeah. Yum. So anyway, I don't know, man. I feel like there is this huge opportunity for craft distillers that have this that are in a size where they can pivot into stuff like this.
Yeah.
To fuck with stuff, man. Like put down a couple of runs or something crazy.
Yeah. Well, what about like a German Hefeweizen yeast that puts out massive banana flavour compound when it's pitched correctly? Like, what kind of result would spirit would that end up as?
Because spirits are a few ingredients too, right?
It's even less.
Yeah.
So it's the same shit. Yeah. The only...
So it'd be rude not to have a tweak on that one too, right?
Yeah. So let's circle back around to what you guys do. And you want to now we're talking yeast and distilling. Do you want to tell us the strains that you're using or creating at the moment?
Sure.
Excuse me. Chili lager. Yum. Which is quite nice. Tell us what you've got and like what the I guess the profiles that they create are.
Yep.
And what they use for in beer. And if you think that there could be some interesting crossover into spirits.
Sure thing.
Put you on the spot now, haven't I?
A couple of beers and whiskey. So we've got 8 different strains that we're currently propagating. So the first one is what we call Buddy, and that's an American ale strain. It's kind of like your classic go-to performer, like your best bud in the brewery.
Yeah, right.
Really clean, really robust. Great for beers like pale ales, IPAs, double IPAs.
It's your USO5 type.
Yeah.
Workhorse.
What we were talking about before, right? The yeast you use when you want the yeast to get out of the way and let the hops shine or let
Sits in that supporting role.
Almost like pseudo lager kind of stuff too. Would it work for that?
It does.
Yep.
Yep.
Just kind of hybrid styles and things
Breweries
like that.
doing that.
Yep.
Pilsners and India pale lagers without the lager yeast.
Yeah, nice. So that is Buddy.
Buddy.
Okay, cool.
Yep. We've also got our most popular strain, based on the big trends in the beer brewing market at the moment, is our hazy strain, which we call Vape.
Yep. That's hilarious.
Yeah. We had a good time naming the strains. And so that's just your classic performer for hazy IPAs.
Right.
Really works well with those. Can produce good esters if pitched at lower rates, or be really clean if pitched at higher rates, and just works to produce a real nice juicy New England IPA.
Yeah. So when we talked the other day, I fucked up. I've been out of the craft beer world for since before hazy was a big thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I assumed that some of the haze and hazy IPAs was coming from unflocculated yeast, which you're telling me is wrong.
Well, it can do.
Okay, but that's not...
It shouldn't be where it comes from. Yeah. It sometimes can. You can end up with cans of hazies that have a bit of yeast sediment to the bottom. It's not really what you want. It's generally wants to come from the protein. So things like oat additions, malted oats, raw oats. And that really lends to that haze character more so than the yeast.
So what sort of esters... was it vape, wasn't it? What sort of esters does vape throw if you do... I'm assuming it's the same old thing, right? Like fermented slightly hot, underpitch it, all those sorts of things we just have added a little bit.
Yeah, it's got that potential, but I don't think Kiwis have much of a palate for esters, it seems.
No, that's why I'm pushing you, because like for distillers, it's kind of like if you don't have some sort of flavour to bring to the table, why we just use Buddy, right?
Sure.
What's the
You're not looking for the haze in them.
It is a strain that it's got English origin to it. From the Boddington's brewery. You can certainly get them out to flex and throw a lot of esters. It's just not something we typically see much. The hazies brewed by our customers here, they're sort of typically looking for clean and let the hops throw the fruit in there. I'm not sure what that is, but certainly you could. It's one that'll throw that up with a bit of encouragement.
And so that would be more along the more traditional English sort of estery side of things.
Yep.
Something similar to 04, kind of that soft, orchardy, fruity stuff.
Stone fruit sort of stuff. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
All right, what else you got, man?
We have 2 English strains. The first one is called Biscuit, and so that's a pretty all-rounder English ale strain, kind of like the SO4.
Yeah.
Has the potential for ester production. It's high flocculating, as English strains certainly can be. Drops out nicely, and you can actually co-ferment it with other strains, and that will sort of grab onto the less flocculating strains and bring them down.
Was this the stuff that we saw coming out?
Yeah, in the tank yesterday.
Was bananas, dude.
Yeah.
It was literally like sand. It was just like
it gets so clumpy.
It's so crazy. I've never seen yeast like that before. Like, to me, yeast, even when it's super flocculate or super flocculent, it goes like a really dense
Cream.
like cream. Yeah, that's the perfect way to describe it, right?
Yeah.
This was like, I don't know. I feel like there's a
like
kid's
cottage
toy,
cheese.
like silly putty or what's the
It's got
the
like
sand you use underwater.
Yeah, the kinetic.
Kinetic sand. Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes out the bottom of the tank, when we're like harvesting it for packaging, it like will hold the tube shape as it comes out. You know, it's got its own real like Newtonian kind of physics to it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
What have we done? Just, no, it's a super flocker.
That's cool. So that could be interesting for something kind of like the Balcones sort of profile, like stone fruit.
Yep.
Kind of pear.
Yep.
A little bit of apple. Borderline peach, all that sort of kind of stuff. Fun. All right.
For sure. Yeah, and like, I mean, being a good flocculator, you'll have a nice clear wash.
Yeah. So
if you're looking for clarity going into, well, I mean, you've just told us about tipping slurry in and being all good, but
that is an equipment based thing though, like, right? So I'm lucky enough to have an oil jacketed still, which is basically a big old bain marie with a big ass stirrer in the middle of it. Like, that's one of my stills, and basically all I use that for now is throw the porridge into that when I've got something that's porridgey.
Chunky stuff.
Yeah, but the other stills I have are just literally a bare element, like a homebrew. HLT or whatever, right? There's just like literally an electric element sticking out and touching the wort. So you don't want to put something that's really yeasty
solid.
in here. And actually have it. Exactly, right. Yeah. So if you're in that sort of camp, depending on, I mean, I think there's things coming out in New Zealand now where exposed elements aren't going to be allowed in stills. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, there's whispers of it. Yeah. But so that it's not that just because I did that couple of times, you know, like for something more like Scotch production, single malt production, those sort of things, they do sort of lean more towards a clear-ish wort. And once again, for production, right? Like a bit flopped, if it does its job and then
drops out. Yeah, they're great for that.
Yeah, so that's biscuit, and then we've got another English strain called Rude Boy. So that's more of a London ESB strain.
Fuller's sort of style profile, or
for Fuller's ESB profile. And what do we know about that one?
It's less attenuative than the biscuit strain, so it leaves slightly more residual sugars in there. Again, very highly flocculent. And reasonably similar. I think the main difference between those two strains is the attenuation.
Right.
Being slightly
pretty
different.
similar flavour profiles.
Yeah.
I have to ask.
But then we've got some customers who like swear by one versus the other.
Yeah. So subtle differences.
They're like, well, we've got Rude Boy in stock. And they're like, no, I want biscuit, and vice versa. So I was like, okay, it's working well for you. So sweet.
Fair enough, man. I got to ask. I'm seeing tunnels and stretches, sensing a chill vibe, and there's a yeast called Rude Boy. Punk, ska, alt, origins. Here somewhere? Is this where it's coming from?
That is the origin of the name. Cool. Yeah, we actually we did a crowdfunding campaign last year, and one of the rewards that people could pledge for was to name a yeast strain. And so the person who named Rude Boy did so because of their love of ska, and
that person deserves a medal.
Yeah, they got a certificate. So halfway there.
We probably shout them out. It's Dale Gould. He used to brew at Whistling Sisters in town.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Big ska fan. And bit of a legend in the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so shot Dale.
Shout out to Dale. All right. So what else you got?
What else have we got? We've got our strain called Unicorn.
Yes.
Which is our Belgian wit strain.
Okay.
So that's a highly phenolic producing. Its origins back to the Hoegaarden brewery. Okay. So great for Belgian style wits, white IPAs. Just produce a lot of phenolic character, pepper and like caramelized banana and all kinds of awesome stuff there.
That could be fun.
Could be
really fun.
Yeah.
And you can really stress that one and underpitch it and warm it up.
That banana.
Like, how hot do you reckon you could push it? And
21 to 23.
I think you can probably go warmer if you want to distress it.
I think you're thinking like a.
I am thinking.
brewer.
Yeah. You can go like
You're like, oh, it'll be estery. Brewers, distillers like 35.
I think you'd be looking at sort of like the 27 range would kind of be the upper limits.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like honestly, I think more often than not, just like the guy like M1 and 04, they'll let it free rise up to 35.
Right.
Fuck it, just have at it.
Yeah,
Texas.
just go for gold.
Yeah, do your job or die.
Right. Yeah. Do your job and get the fuck out.
Yeah.
The ones that can't handle it will probably die. There'll be some cells that are a bit like, but then the strong ones will just be like, we're doing this.
Yeah.
You know?
And it is, I mean, the advantage we have is that we don't end up drinking the medium that the yeast was in, right? Like, there's very little yeast in most of these beers, but I mean, would you agree that you could probably, if you really wanted to, like most of these beers, you'd be able to get something out of it that would be like a live, you could propagate from, don't you think?
Yeah, I'd say most of these ones, not pasteurized. They'd be filtered, but not sterile filtered. So there'd be some residual. Yeah.
And distilling, it's gone. You know, you just don't have any of it. So you really can push it. I mean, I still use baker's yeast.
True. I've brewed a beer with baker's yeast before.
Yeah, like for vodka and stuff. And it's just like, I'm going to strip it out to azeotrope and I just want to crank it through. And it does a really good job, man.
Nice.
Yeah, so it is a shift. And it took me a long time to change. I was the same, man. I was like, no, 18 degrees. To maybe 20.
What's that?
I'm not sure what that
Mystery
is.
beer.
Oh, no, that's Fresh November.
Fresh November?
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's the latest in a series of fresh hazy IPAs that Garage Project make. We do a different one every month, different hops and so on, but they're always big, juicy hazies. So that one's got our vape yeast in it.
Nice.
And it's naked because we get samples back from our brewery customers, and sometimes it's like straight off the canning line. And it's like, try that. It's awesome.
So everything that you've brought out today is your yeast, yeah?
Pretty confident the day the deed will be. Pretty confident. Definitely Fresh November.
Yes. Probably.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
It's a fun part of the job.
It's great to see. I mean, like I said, I've been out of the game for a while, but for me, like Garage Project is, it's a pretty heavy hitter in the craft scene in New Zealand. So seeing, you getting buy-in from people like that is super exciting. It makes me really happy, man.
Yeah, totally. It makes us really happy too. It's awesome.
It's a
juicy.
It's a banger, is it?
Yeah. That's punchy.
Whoa,
salad.
That's definitely hoppy. It just smells like fresh hop vine.
Yeah, so this haze is cool.
It smells like pure
protein haze.
So for the distillers out there, if you've never brewed beer, honestly, my fondest memory of the entire process, including drinking the shit, is opening a fresh packet of hops and just jamming your face in it.
Oh, man.
And that's what this is.
Yeah.
100%.
It's awesome, man. There was a conference here in Wellington last year called the Harpy, which is the Māori name for hop.
Yep.
Harpy Symposium. Brewers from the States and all over the world came and sort of congregated here for the hop harvest. And one of my favourite memories of that is that there were some fresh varietals of hops coming out. And some brewers were going up the front to sample them. And the way that they were doing that was loading them into herb grinders.
Oh, no way.
Grinding up these hop pellets. And it was like, I'm getting coconut. Just super nerdy, but great fun.
Which is hilarious because cousin's not legal here in New Zealand.
That's right.
Anyway, we missed that boat, lads. Yeah.
Stick with hops.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. You guys are proud Kiwis, so there's two things that I've got to pour for you because they're both Gladfield products, and I know you've used some of these as for basically beer adjuncts. I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Probably need something to tip into. Hey, I'll steal another one of your glasses.
Yeah, get it.
Dump jar.
Yeah, man.
So does that say peat, does it?
Yeah, man.
This is the Gladfield. Is this the New Zealand peat?
South Island peat. Yeah.
South Island peat. We heard about this when we were
Whoa.
Because they're our good mates down there, and we went and visited them
This is
December last year.
Cool.
And they were telling us about how they'd fetched this from a peat swamp in the South Island.
That's pretty dope, right?
They were smoking it there while we were there.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, we actually nibbled on some of the grain, and it was
cool.
that is swampy. Like, it's not as clean.
Yep.
It's certainly got some West Coast, South
Yeah.
Island earthiness to it.
Definitely.
And I haven't tried anything, any spirit
From
that it's
it.
ended up
Definitely different to the Manuka smoke. Like the Manuka is really sweet and like.
The funny thing is though that so if you compare something like most other smokes that you smell around the world,
Yep.
and especially if you think of like burning heather, burning like scrub, burning scraggly sort of shit, like all the stuff that you have in Scotland that's going to end up in a bog and turn into peat.
Yep.
And then you compare it to burning Manuka. It's almost like there's some sort of analogy between the two.
Right.
Like, and I don't know whether that's just purely because this is such a cool thing conceptually for me, right? Like, I love Islay whiskey.
Yeah.
Smoky Scotch is my jam.
Yep.
So being able to dig it out of the ground in New Zealand, smoke it in New Zealand, stick it on New Zealand malt, like that's been malted in New Zealand, is really, really cool. But then, and then I don't know if it's my biased because I think that's so cool that makes me think that it kind of tastes like New Zealand native
Yeah.
plant matter.
It is
You know
hard
what
to
I mean?
separate. Yeah. It's hard to separate
I
yourself
reckon.
from the bias.
But there is something there, right? Like it's got that sweet, like unctuous punchiness of like Manuka smoke
Like
compared
bush,
to
that bush element.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that kind of sweet rot almost.
Yeah.
Like, but in a good, that's me saying a good thing, not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like that.
It's not like caramel sweetness or
No. Yeah,
like that. It's like a more delicate kind of.
almost like when you what do you call it? A compost bin.
Yes.
That's like in a really
grass.
Yeah, like grass clippings that are
Yeah.
fermenting almost. Yeah, there's some of that to it, and then you compared to something like Lefroy, which is the smoke's real ashy and like
It is. Yeah. It's more like
sweet.
mineral.
It's got a almost coppery
Yep.
mineralness to it. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so
Jurassic Park sort of.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of like fresh rainfall on like an area of the bush.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
like petrichor kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
legit.
so-
and when I got to nibble that malt, it was straight away just like that's different. Like there's it wasn't like I was trying to figure out how. I didn't have to really pick at that. It was like, oh, that is grunty. Like,
yeah, and there's something undeniably New Zealand
Yeah.
in it. I don't quite know how to say it, and once again, that could just be a conceptual. Yay, New Zealand! I don't know.
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah.
well, I mean, and in us like hunting for wild yeasts, which is still an ongoing project for us. Sometimes folks
that's
will
cool.
ask like, oh, so like, what does New Zealand taste like? And it's like, we don't know. It's whatever New Zealand, how New Zealand wants to express itself, and so like Gladfield hasn't necessarily, got the South Island peat to taste this way. They've gone and dug it up, and carried it through into the smoking process and beautiful malts that they've grown to showcase it. But what's coming in there is that's probably why it tastes like a bit like New Zealand, is because it's literally some of that expression coming through, and so that's what we're looking forward to finding in some New Zealand yeasts as well. We won't have a clue what kind of profile or performance they're going to have. We'll just see what they've got to offer. So,
How far off having like a minimal viable product are you on that, something like that?
So we're waiting to push the button on the next stage, or we're waiting for our research and development partners to have some sort of free time to undertake that next stage of work. So currently we've got the isolates that we've isolated from our initial samples. We've got them banked in a cryogenic freezer. The next stage involves sort of whittling down that library based on kind of beer performance criteria. So will they?
It's got to actually make
It's got to make the beer. And the ones that pass through that next filter will then go through to a sensory evaluation. Do they smell and taste good?
Yep.
And from there, we'll look at getting them genetically DNA characterized to identify what they are. And that will be, from that point, will be whether we commercialise. It's probably looking like a 6 months to a year kind of thing, I would say.
That's like mid-term goals. Like I was thinking years down the track.
We're pretty keen to push the button and keep this thing rolling. So...
Because it was last summer that we went out deep in the bush. I went to 3 really remote locations in different parts of New Zealand, the West Coast, Hawke's Bay, and Northland, and foraged a bunch of different samples: native botanicals, non-native, flowers, berries, tree bark, leaf litter, dirt.
That's so cool.
Beehive.
Dope! Yeah.
And we've got a whole bunch of isolates which are believed to be yeast off of those samples. They're in the cryobank now. Then we sort of launched this business and we're like, oh crap, this is real. That project is like, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's expensive.
Yeah.
But we're just chasing that magic for the sake of what it could mean for the industry. It's just really cool. So we kind of put that on hold so that we could focus on getting things going here. And things are just on hold a little bit longer because of COVID. The scientists are pretty busy at the moment responding to the global pandemic. So beer
yeast isn't quite as high.
It's a close second. So in January or something, I think that's going to kick off again.
Cool.
And that'll be real cool. We're hoping to include some local brewers in that like sensory process as well, because viewers may not know that for commercial brewers, when the hop harvest happens in March, they'll sort of go down there, and even brewers in the past have come from the States, and they'll like lay out little piles on papers of it could be the same varietal of hop, but it's grown in like different farms or different blocks, and you're getting that terroir coming through based on those conditions. Same things happens with grapes, and so they'll like sniff the little piles of hops and sort of place contract orders for the ones they want. We'd like to see the same happen for some of these yeast strains and be like, because it's these strains aren't going to have any style allocation yet. There might be funk, or there might be acidity or fruit, and
or
so a brewer is able to smell or raw ingredient and start to have ideas and go, that'd be great in a XPA or a Pilsner with, and they start to imagine how it could be used.
You just never know what's going to trigger someone's like creative flair, right?
Absolutely.
And even things that, my flavour preference in whiskey is pretty far left field. Like I didn't bring you anything too funky because I didn't want to scare you. And I should have told you too, sorry guys, those are both 100% South Island peat. Like the grist is 100% peat and 100% Manuka.
Sick, cool.
So they're a bit like, once again, they're the sledgehammers right now.
You're gonna try X-Rex, man.
Is what?
Just off camera earlier, we were mentioning that beer called X-Rex.
Yes. Yep.
By Yeasty Boys. That is a 100% heavily peated distilling malt beer. It's a golden ale.
Right.
So we fuck with we fuck with the 100%.
I've got stuff that straight up tastes like sweaty gym socks and
I'm into that.
Blue teas and stuff. And to me, it's interesting. Okay, so next time we'll
sour beers we use descriptors like horse blanket. Wet cat. I'm into the weird stuff.
Spread the like-minded.
This is really awesome though, the Manuka versus the peat.
It's interesting together, eh? I think
savory as.
I think my goal for the two is to find a blend between them to mix them. And what I actually wanted from the South Island peat was to keep some of it and age it on Manuka wood and make it like a fully New Zealand whiskey.
Yeah.
And now I've just realised that I can't really call it a fully New Zealand whiskey when I'm pitching fucking 04 or something into
That's
it.
right.
Yeah, so...
Right.
We can help you out.
Yeah, I might have to have a talk to you guys in a year or so. Yeah. So where do you see, like, what's the big goal for Froth Tech? Like in 10 years' time, where do you want to be? Like, are you looking at exporting? Are you...
Yeah, we're looking at exporting. We've had inquiries already from quite a few breweries in Australia. So that's another big market for us. I guess while we're looking on that horizon, we also want to make sure that we're really looking after our customers here.
Yeah.
I guess it's that balance between growing but not growing too fast, that you sort of make sacrifices in regards to quality of the product. So we're really, really focused on ensuring our standards are met with our product. But yeah, I mean, looking to export, I guess it's just trying to reach out as far as we can in the New Zealand market. Hopefully, keep undertaking these sort of innovative experiments and investigations into wild yeast. The New Zealand Yeast Project is a really exciting piece for us.
Also, like non-beer stuff.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like we're beer is what we know.
It's where you came from.
Yeah, where we came from. So it's certainly a good place for us to start and to connect with industry and collaborate as we develop our process and our strain library. We certainly do have interest from non-beer craft purveyors, wine, cider, seltzer, distillation, kombucha. There's a real world of fermented drinks out there, and they're all really cool, and I think yeast can really flex. Especially in cases where the yeast that's been used is just like a brick of off the shelf, like dry yeast. It's like
it's a commodity product,
or it's just the same kombucha SCOBY. It's like, we could spike that with something else and have some diversity there on the shelves. But yeah, like there's a whole world of opportunity out there of what yeast can do. It's already starting to emerge in ways where it can transform the food industry, and like yeasts have been bred or modified rather to make medicines and food additives. They use microbes to grow insulin now, vanilla essence, which is just a lot more efficient when you don't need you can do it inside a tank, and the cell density is so dense in there. Animal proteins is another one. There's companies in the States that are growing cow milk proteins using yeast and then making ice cream that tastes exactly like vanilla ice cream,
but has nothing to do with cow.
According to the FDA, is ice cream.
What?
Because it's
crazy.
Like
genetically,
it's the same stuff,
right?
At a molecular level, it is the same, so it's classed the same. It just, I mean, the cells in a cow are responsible for making milk is 0.1% of the cells, so it's a big beast and a big farm. Was it a moo?
So it was a sage knowing moo.
And so, like the milk that goes with flat whites and stuff is such a small percentage of what's made. A lot of the milk from New Zealand is made into milk powder and protein powders and stuff.
Yeah.
So it would be cool to just take some of the load off there, because it is a bit of a heavy load, on the environment in some cases where it's quite intensive. So I don't know. The 10-year piece is more just like transforming food and beverages, especially in a way that like helps people and planet.
That's freaking exciting. I'm gonna have to come back and see you guys in like 1 year increments. All right, guys. We got a few questions from the Patreons to answer afterwards, but we'll do that once we're offline. I just want to say a huge freaking thank you. This has been amazing. If you guys out there in internet land are in New Zealand and you're brewing beer, you're making distilled spirits or whatever, reach out and get in touch with these guys. There is one question that I have to ask though before we go. Homebrewers, home distillers, are they going to be able to get their hands on Froth? Is that a thing?
Yep, we're working hard on that at the moment. So we're looking at aiming to get something out there next year.
Okay, cool.
Just currently, there's a few different things that need to happen for us to be able to package it effectively and to maintain our standards. So it's not just quite as simple as putting it into a smaller package. Right. So we're working on that at the moment, and aiming to have something out on the market next year because we know that y'all are hungry.
Yeah. All right, where do people find you guys? Let them know.
We've got a website. It's frothtech.co.nz. We've got a newsletter sign up there. We chuck out a bit of interesting news every couple of months. And that's the best way to keep on top of what we're doing. And that'll be the first place we'll make a lot of noise about things like homebrew yeast coming out or the wild yeast project coming to a surface and where you can try beers made with these yeasts. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Awesome. Oh, thanks, lads. That's a perfect place to leave it. We're going to do things a little bit differently today because there's a little bit of gold that you guys haven't heard yet. Essentially what happens is whenever I'm going to record a podcast with someone, as long as I know in advance, I throw it up over on Patreon with the person I'm going to be talking to or a link to their website, their company, whatever it happens to be, and let the Patreons throw up some questions on that post for me to ask once we've settled down at the end of a podcast and the true podcast has been wrapped up. Now, two reasons. One, people have been asking how this works and what the deal is. So I wanted to show you the sort of things that the Patreons get. But also some of this information was just so good that, I wanted to let other people hear it as well. So what we're doing today is we're going to let the first few Q&A questions with the Froth Tech go out after this. After I thank the people that I need to thank for making this podcast happen. Number one, Froth Tech. Thank you guys. Obviously it couldn't have happened without you. I am so very, very proud to see a company like this kicking ass in New Zealand. So thank you guys for taking the time to talk to me. And thank you to Adventures in Home Brewing, homebrewing.org/CTC. Check it out over there. And of course, Gladfields. Get your hands on some Gladfields. All right, guys, I'm going to leave you with a couple of the questions that the Froth Tech guys answered from the Patreons. See ya. All right. Quick fire round, guys, for the Patreon. Thank you, Patreons. I appreciate it. Guybrush Threepwood. That is hilarious. Did you change your name, dude? I haven't seen that before. Advantages and disadvantages of liquid yeast versus dry yeast. I think we kind of covered this in the video we're going to put out. Yep. But if you want to bang that one out quickly as a quick fire thing.
Sure thing. Harvesting and repitching, liquid yeast is a lot more suited to that. So you get better health and better resultant fermentations out of that. You get higher ester production from liquid yeast. Dry yeast, you get more chances of things like acetaldehyde and phenolics showing up. Liquid yeast, better ability to assess viability. You got any others?
I just sort of see it as like fresh, healthy yeast is going to gift good flavor profile.
They're all ready to rock.
Damaged. Sad. Underpitched yeast. Is going to throw off flavors. So we like to think we're certainly in the fresh, healthy category. Cool. And trying and then rehydrating and pitching yeast. It's not as in good shape after that first ferment as well. So the whole harvesting, repitching 5 to 10 generations, that's good value for breweries if you're in a position to do that.
Yeah. And on the flip side of the ledger, I have to imagine just shelf stability. That's
the main bonus for dried yeast. Yep.
And because of that, I guess economy in terms of, because the other thing is too, a lot of these guys aren't commercially brewing, right? They may not brew for 3 weeks. So having a packet of dry yeast that you can just keep in the fridge, I get it.
Totally. Hey, I've used dry yeast in the past, and
best practices for, oh dear God, one-armed monkey. This is, we're going to have to not go into this in depth, dude, because this could be an entire freaking podcast by itself, which we should probably do sometime. But best practices for homebrewers in terms of propagating, washing, storing yeast at home. I mean, I know you guys could literally talk about this for hours.
Is that propagating, washing, storing?
Yeah. And when he says washing, I'm assuming He's really saying rinsing. I doubt very much he's using because technically washing is acid, isn't it?
Yeah, acid washing. I mean, I think it's a term that's used in home brewers for like sterile water washing, things like that. Yeah. So I guess the main tip would be hygiene and sanitation. As anytime you're working with microbes, you want to be as sure as you can be that there is no unwanteds in there. So I'd say investing in a flask, like an Erlenmeyer style flask, something that you has temperature tempered glass that you can heat it and cool it, and it won't be damaged through that. Making sure that you are boiling up your propagation liquid for at least 15 minutes. Maintaining temperature control to the specified sort of rates within your specific strain of yeast. Another key thing for propagation is aeration and shaking, to really enhance the yield that you're going to get out of each stage of your starter. If you can have it constantly agitated, that is ideal. Or stirred, if you can't achieve that, shaking it intermittently as frequently as you can.
Yeah, you can't overdo that.
The more O2 basically in those small size propagations, the better.
Is there a kind of a trusted resource where you would direct people to go where you know the information's good?
Yeah, there's I was going to say using some of the yeast calculators online. There is one that I can give you the link for.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll snap it in the link for.
Where it just gives you a bit more clarity on what you're doing. So rather than just being like, I've got some fresh yeast, I'm going to just dip it in a flask worth of wort, you can work out, you can actually punch in the date of manufacturer on the pouch. So it's going to guesstimate how much is
kind of like
this life is deteriorated. Stuff like that. Those are really helpful. And then you can work out how much it needs to go, how much wort it needs to go into. Maybe if you need to do one stage propagation or step it up again. In order
to get to the cell
you can also punch in what you're going to be fermenting in what volume. So it'll tell you if you're going to get to the required cell mass in one propagation or if you need to go a bit further. Hygiene, big one. If you can get your hands on a pressure cooker, that's a step further. I mean, you'll probably be just fine boiling. In terms of washing, that usually refers to collecting your yeast slurry that has dropped to the bottom of your vessel, whether you're scooping that out with a clean spoon or whether you're able to harvest that out of a conical, depending on what you're using. But it's mostly about getting your liquid yeast slurry off of hot material.
Who's your mic on, bro? That's cool. Sorry guys, that audio will be a little dirty. We should be able to rescue it though. Just click.
In terms of yeast washing, that in the homebrew sense usually refers to separating your yeast slurry from hot material because they've all dropped out together in the tank.
So actually, just to interrupt you, we don't have hops. If it's just like literally grain particulate kind of stuff, do you even see an advantage in washing?
I guess it would be for if you were going to process it in some way for long-term storage.
Okay,
that would probably be...
so if you're doing slant plates... If you're just going to whack it in the fridge for a couple of weeks, would you just...
A couple of weeks should be all right. It's just... over time, those grains are going to start to break down. And so if it's just as pure culture as you can get in there, they're all just going to bunch up together and chill. But that organic material in there is going to start to degrade and it could be detrimental to your yeast health.
What are your thoughts on the... Because I've heard both ways, right? Like from the beer days of, wash it, get it as pure as you can, versus, but you're not really in a laboratory setting, and every time you fuck with something, you're like flirting with getting a contamination in there. Do you know what I mean? Like
I would lean more towards I'm more risk averse for contamination. That would be my thing, especially at the homebrew level. I think that maintaining that hygiene is the most important aspect in regards to yeast handling.
And then especially if you're going to do another propagation, if you're going to do like a starter.
Yeah, if that's going to happen, you're going to wake it up again. You're going to revitalize it again anyway.
Yeah.
The other thing for like kind of yeast storage is consideration of oxygen.
Okay.
Once your yeast is in a dormant state, so it's kind of absorbed any O2 that was additionally in your propagation. That's when if you reintroduce oxygen to it after that, you're going to wake it back up. So you want to keep your yeast in that dormant state, so in an anaerobic environment.
Okay, cool.
So that's the kind of, ideal for long-term storage.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying in terms of like another jar, another tube. Yeah. Every time it's like, I cleaned it, but is it clean enough? Every time it touches something, another spoon.
Yeah.
It's another element of risk compared to just not touch it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can wash yeast with like some, just like mineral water or distilled water from the supermarket. That's definitely sterile in there, and so it wouldn't be too hard to like maybe sanitize the outside of the bottle and then be able to wash your yeast that way if you need to.
So if we kind of said like rule of thumb, if you're harvesting a yeast cake that's like not full on been fermented if you ferment on the grain, you're pretty much fucked, aren't you? Like, are you going to wash that? Like,
I think I don't know, you could.
Like, you'd have to take a sample out of it and then basically regrow it, and like, you couldn't just take a pitch out of it, I would imagine. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like a lot of this, like, especially a lot of home distilling recipes will be, you take it all off and you leave a big ass cake, and then that day you put another brew in on top of it, and that works. I've done that before, it works great.
Yeah.
But in terms of taking that and putting it in the fridge, I feel a little bit sketchy about that. But so with that aside, if you're fermenting a clean wort, 2 weeks or less in the fridge, you'd probably just go with take the yeast cake out of a conical if you can, with really clean stuff if you can't, and just leave it. But if you're wanting to store, like I don't have Hornindale very often. If I wanted to just keep Hornindale around, that's when I'd start thinking about washing and processing it further. Cool. Yeast counts at home. And they specifically ask about telling between live and dead cells.
Okay.
And I had no idea about this until I came and visited you guys. Tell the people what you told me.
So
they want to know how to do it at home?
Yeah, is that viable at home?
Well, you'll need to get viable is a good word. You would need a microscope.
Yeah.
So if you could get access, and there are some kind of cheaper like microscopes out there these days.
Like some of those little electric hook up to your phone jobbies are actually not shit anymore, right?
There's some great like kind of tech out there. So you just have to do a bit of research. You need a microscope with 100 times magnification, or a 10 times on the lens and 10 times on the microscope piece. So 100 times or 400 times in order to do it. In regards to viability checks, so first, generally when you're counting yeast, you will get your slurry, you will dilute it with sterile water, usually anywhere from 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, so 1 part yeast, 9 parts water. Then you can take another 1 part of that to another 9 parts of water. Serial dilutions. Then you need to get hold of some cell stain. So there's a few different options there. Methylene blue or trypan blue are commonly used ones. Methylene blue has been demonstrated to be less reliable, particularly in slurries where the yeast health is below 80%.
We're getting the knowledge here, guys.
I like this. So I would recommend trypan blue is pretty readily available. There's also methylene violet, or there is another stain available called erythrocin B, and that is a much less toxic product to the environment, but still has really effective and accurate staining. So you need to get your hands on a cell stain. Then it's purely a matter of mixing your stain with your diluted yeast. That will be another dilution stage as well, so you need to consider that in your calculations. And you would need a hemocytometer, which is a
what?
A hemocytometer. So it's basically a microscope slide that is gridded so that hemo meaning blood, so it's used for counting blood. Yeast cells and blood cells are very similar in size. So you'd need to get your hands on one of those. And a mic. So there's a bit of investment required. It's not too crazy. You can get some of this stuff reasonably cheap on AliExpress, for example. You don't need the super high quality stuff for homebrew level. And then it's a matter of, you can look up on a lot of resources online for actually undertaking those counts and then making the associated calculations to figure out your cell density.
Do you think at a home distilling level, that is like, there's two ways to look at this, right? Like, some people just like it for the geekery.
Yep.
They're like, I don't really give a fuck if it makes my beer or my spirits taste better. I want the toys.
Yep.
I don't want to fuck around with a calculator and,
Sure.
like, have at it, guys.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's really at a home distilling level? Does
I
that
think
have
it can
advantage?
be like, does it have an advantage?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think particularly if you're like trying to have a bit of a yeast library, yeast bank in your fridge, and you're wanting to monitor the health of that, or you're just wanting to geek out on it, it's not unachievable. You can pick up a secondhand microscope for $100. We've done it. You can grab a hemocytometer for like $30-40 for a basic one. Cell stain is fairly cheap to get your hands on, and so once you've got that on hand, like those steps that Ryan just described don't need to be like aseptic technique. You're not trying to preserve this, the cleanliness of it, because you do want to, if you're pulling a sample from your jar that you work so hard to keep clean, you
want to protect the jar.
You want to make sure maybe you do that under a Bunsen, or you do that, or an alcohol lamp, so that when you open it, you're not puking a bunch of wild microbes in there. But you just need to pull a little sample with a pipetta. It doesn't even need to be like a laboratory single channel pipetta. It can just be like, the eyedropper style ones.
Right,
Close enough to do your cereal dilutions. Add your stains so you know which ones are dead and which are living, because the dead ones stain. And then, it's pretty damn cool going from looking at this creamy slurry into that micro universe. And seeing little buddies in there, and
this has to be like, because we've been talking too that it's crazy that most brewers and distillers just don't have the ability to fuck with this stuff, right? They don't have the time in the day, they don't have the equipment. If they did, exactly the same advice just to get started.
Yeah, same advice to a brewery. So I mean, I give that advice to breweries. I think for me, on a homebrew level, I never messed around with viabilities or cell counts and stuff. My main indication was if my starter was frothy and active. And I think for a lot of homebrew, provided that you're using maybe one of those online yeast calculators, I think that gets you most of the way there.
I guess that's what I was getting at with the, like, is it really going to improve things?
I mean, it would improve. It would improve. It would be a great step for helping you hone in on recipe and recipe development.
And repeatability.
However, you can get pretty damn close to that with doing your yeast starter and just making sure it's nice and active.
Make sure it's going.